Gilbert Galindo, welcome to Neuma Vision. Please state your name for the record.
Hello, Gilbert Galindo.
And where are we talking to you from?
I'm in my apartment in Sunnyside, Queens.
But that's not where you started life. Tell me about your very earliest sound memory.
Sound memory. Oh,
Yeah.
oh. Actually, I guess a couple of things really. Well, actually, when I was a kid, I was obsessed with the HBO theme song, and I do remember getting up in front of the TV with the blue lights or whatever, and just being entranced by it, and just falling in love with the theme song. And my mom even said I was still in diapers when that was happening, so it probably would have been 2 years old or something, back in 1984. So, yeah. And then, of course, the sounds of Tejano music growing up in my home. And my first song that I tried to sing was in Spanish. Like, my grandfather got me a guitar when I guess it was 3 years old or something, maybe four. And I just got up in the chimney mantle and just started strumming. I didn't know how to play it, but I just started strumming and singing in Spanish. And yeah, and then I think those are my earliest memories of my encounters with music.
So you had a supportive artistic family. Did they encourage you taking your next steps? How did you have that moment to say, I'm going to be a musician?
Yeah, well, when I was in elementary, we didn't have enough money to pay for lessons. So, but then when middle school or junior high came around, I wanted to join the band. My uncle, one of my uncles, who lives in California, had played cornet in the Odessa High School band, and Crockett, probably, I forget which junior high he went to. But anyway, I had the cornet laying around, but that was already defunct. So by the time I was able to go to seventh grade, when we started junior high, I decided to play cornet. But actually, percussion was my first choice. I didn't make the cut. So then, yeah, then I started to play trumpet. So, and then after that, about 6 months or so, I decided to make an arrangement of this very simple piano arrangement of Beethoven's Five, just basically a two-line piano rendition of Beethoven Five, which kind of sounds ridiculous, but it happened. And I wanted to arrange it for brass ensemble. And then when I was in the middle of that, I'm like, why don't I just write my own symphony? And then it's about the year 1995, and so I'm like, well, if I'm going to write classical music, if I'm going to write a symphony, then I better listen to a lot of classical music and listen to orchestra music and all that stuff. And so I was 13 years old, and I decided to become a composer, and just delved into the world of classical music and wrote my first symphony. So it's basically how I did it. I had all these other melodies that I started to write down, but then the first real composition was a symphony. So,
did you ever hear that performed? And when you do hear your other music or your music performed by other people, do you still get that same thrill?
yeah, I didn't hear that performed, I think. Yeah, however, I grew up in a very supportive musical environment, as much as you can, out in West Texas in Odessa. And there was the Midland Odessa Symphony musicians, and they taught in the schools, private lessons, and then they have resident ensembles. So you had a brass quintet, a woodwind quintet, not back then. I don't think it was a woodwind quintet back then, but they had a string quartet and an orchestra. So after my symphony, I decided either to write a brass quintet or a trumpet concerto. And basically, I hounded the conductor of the Midland Odessa Symphony to play my trumpet concerto. I mean, here's this 13, 14-year-old, begging a professional conductor to play their piece. And eventually, they're like, okay, we'll play it for the kids' concerts. Of course, they're probably not going to program it for one of the main concerts, and that worked, and then they kept on making cuts here and there, but it was working. And Mike Santorelli, who was playing trumpet on there, and it was kind of like sounding like Haydn, right? So I got to hear that. And in terms of the thrill, I remember when the brass quintet, the Lone Star Brass Quintet is what they're called, they read one of my earliest brass quintets, and it was the most thrilling thing. And today, yeah, of course, there's a sensation when the music is becoming live, and not so much in rehearsals, but like, when it's out and when it's being when it's being live, there's all these mixed feelings that I'm feeling when I'm listening to a premiere or a performance of my music. And yeah, I'm like, okay, did I do this right? Did I make this music impact the way I want it to impact? How's the audience responding? And so that's where my mind is. I know, yeah. So it's thrilling, exciting, and scary all at the same time.
Having been a cornet player and also a percussionist, do you think that still carries through in your current kind of gift for melodic lyricism or rhythmic interest?
Yeah, the rhythm never left me. I would say that. I never became a percussionist, but you know, I am very fond of rhythm, and especially, like, yeah, if you listen to some, like, it's like the percussion piece that I have on my album, not the light but the fire that burns, especially like in the last movement, you hear that rhythmic drive that permeates, and that is, and a lot of my writing is actually still influenced by marching band percussion. Jimmy Olagi was one of the assistants at Odessa High School, and I think he still is. But he writes some really incredible drum cadences, so that was very inspiring. And in terms of the trumpet and cornet playing, yeah, well, I mean, you go through the Arden book and you learn all these late 1800 melodies and whatnot. But I also love fanfares. I mean, you know, it's just, I just love it, right? And I studied with Augusta Reed Thomas, who was also a former trumpet player. And I kind of resonated with her and her inclination to write a lot of fanfarish type rhythms in her music. And so you'll see that sort of stuff in my music as well, my orchestral music and you know, brass chamber stuff. But I haven't written that much brass. I do have a fanfare for brass and percussion, in addition to a couple orchestra pieces. So yeah, absolutely, percussion and brass writing do still permeate my music.
What are some of the other things that you learned from your most important teachers that you would like to maybe pass on to, you know, future students?
Yeah.
Words of wisdom, you know, technical advice or life advice.
Yeah, to other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I would say the one thing that I felt that could have been emphasized a little bit more. One, the business aspect of music. You have to learn about, well, networking is a kind of weird term in a way, because that makes me nervous, and probably others that are like me. So the way I like to think of it is make friends, be cordial, and get along with people in the world. You know, attend concerts. I mean, go to concerts, talk to people afterwards. Don't be afraid of being a little bit social. We are all a little bit awkward. We're artists. You know, I'm sorry, probably some artists are not as awkward as others, are not awkward at all, but I can be a little awkward for sure. And to just make friends with musicians and composers, and see who are your people, who are your tribe in that aspect. The other thing is that the whole aesthetics, like what kind of music you should write, blah, 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 et cetera, right? So train yourself to fine tune your craft, absolutely. You know, learn about 12-tone music, learn how to write counterpoint, learn about the early stages, you know, of written music, and see and try to find out how music was done before the 800s, when you had Gregorian chant and whatnot. Learn what's going on in pop music and jazz and the extremes of any kind of genre. So learn about that, and yeah, and don't worry what kind of music you're going to be writing. If it's this kind of style or that kind of style, we all have preferences, but what's going to resonate and be pure in your heart is what you should be doing. We gotta learn as much as we can. I believe in that. We gotta progress and grow as an artist and a musician, because probably we have not found who we are as a musician or an artist yet. But do not be afraid to do what comes naturally to you.
You've got so many musical strings to your bow, professionally and artistically. Can you list some of them and how they kind of inform each other? You're like a expert on notation, you're a producer, you're a DJ. Tell me about some of those things and how they kind of integrate into this larger musical personality.
Yeah, because I would say this, like I mentioned just a moment ago, my first music that I, kind of naturally just did was Tejano music, or just a Spanish sort of thing, without knowing any music, right? So already there was, reflecting back, I wasn't only interested in classical music. I became interested in classical music at 13. And so I was drawn, of course, to the Mexican music, but also 80s rock, 70s Motown, 60s and 50s rock, and early 90s rap. I was a big fan of MC Hammer. I had the MC Hammer pants, And then, of course, at that time, I was enamored with Selena. And but then came around 95, and then I pretty much stopped paying attention to pop music and anything else besides classical, until I heard Missy Elliott in a car, Lose Control, in 2005. And so that was really exciting. And around that time, I was at the Cleveland Institute of Music, and having been spoiled by Chicago, which was a great city, Cleveland I wasn't so much into. And so I took trips to New York during that time. And then I went to the clubs, a club called Roxy, and I fell in love with the house music there, which is tribal house music or tech house music from that time, with DJs like Tony Moran and Junior Sanchez and Peter Rawhofer, who's now passed. And so that was the first time that I ever felt like dancing on my own in a club. Before that, you had to force me to dance. So I fell in love with that music. And so when I came here to the city, trying to make a living as a composer or just as a musician, that's my goal, just like try to make my living from all sorts of music. So I try to do music administration and did education, but what comes to it is like, well, and then I also was interested in music copying, and so did that, and try to establish a network and could get to talk to people and get better at that craft. And then around 2008, I had received a fellowship from the Meet the Composer Van Leer Fellowship, which with that money, I bought a MacBook Pro and Ableton Live software. So then I started toying around with these drum rhythms I heard at the Roxy from the tribal house music. And I have not stopped since then. And then I remember going out one time, listening to a DJ. I'm like, you know what, I could do this too. So, and so eventually around 2011, I had the courage to go up to this drag queen at the former Boots and Saddle, which is a little hole in the wall bar that existed in the West Village. And there was just nothing but drag shows at that time. And she said, no, there's nothing available right now, but go talk to this promoter that's a friend of mine. And I got my first gig from him. And then eventually the drag queen called me back and like, hey, I just fired my DJ. Can you come in and audition? And I won the audition. So yeah, I always had these interests, multiple interests in music, and not just classical. Where sometimes I was thinking that, oh, I'm only interested in classical, but that's not always the case. I don't think that's the case with anybody, that we're only interested in one genre. And we should be open to any genres that resonate with us, because all these genres offer different experiences that do speak to our experience as humans, right? So just be unafraid to explore.
One thing that strikes me about your composition is that they are kind of separate genres on the surface, in the sense that there's been a history, particularly in New York, for the last 30, 40 years, of, well, we grew up liking rock music and pop music, but we're also classical, let's combine them. I didn't hear a lot of combining in US, or the intention to combine. Is that conscious? Am I misreading something?
Yeah, I don't think it's just conscious. I mean, I think it's just like natural with me. I mean, in some ways, I can be a traditionalist. I I am very happy with just a with the regular string quartet. I'm very happy with just a regular orchestra. I'm very, very happy hearing like a hip hop song that fits within the realms of hip hop or rock or whatever. Uh, and it's just I mean, like, yeah, it's just the love of the genres themselves that I like, that I want to continue on within it. Now and then yeah, they do inform each other, is the way I like to think of it, especially when I'm producing my EDM sort of stuff. I do add more thicker textures than maybe that you might find in some more colorful textures, maybe, I don't know, or just more a mix of different types of synth sounds, and because it's a lot of fun. It's like soundscaping, right? And it's almost like writing orchestra music as well, which I love to write orchestra music. And then how that might affect my classical music. Well, I mean, I am gearing towards more of a regular felt pulse these days and more melodic material. But also what I love to do in both the EDM music that I produce and my classical is play around more with pentatonic melodies or bluesy melodies or little hooks here and there that can intrigue the ear, and then they're treated differently in both genres. So yeah, and then I just love working in what I love working in. So
Your album is called Terrestrial Journeys. Do celestial journeys also make an appearance in your life?
well, true celestial journeys we won't really know about, and we can only dream about at this moment, right? Uh, yeah, I mean, I that's the way I look at life. It's just it's spiritual. Life is spiritual. Life is also material, and we are on this earth, this terrestrial plane, this terrestrial existence, and it just speaks to the reality of our experiences, and just being open about emotions that I've gone through and that anybody's gone through. So I thought it was especially poignant to do that, because also, like, what I also noticed when I title my works, they kind of allude to what I might be going through mentally or spiritually or just in my life. And yeah, life is a journey and we can keep on going. So
Now, life in New York City is an especially crazy journey, probably. Do you think that reinforces your contemplative life? And I know you spent some time as a Franciscan postulate. Is there kind of a balance there that you're seeking to achieve, and you chose life in the city consciously again?
yeah, New York is very noisy, right? And it can be very smelly and aggravating and all that good stuff, or not so good stuff sometimes. But I love this city. And you have to purposely seek out quiet and silence and solitude in order to try to live more of a contemplative life. And I have to remind myself of that. Sometimes I have to get away from the city because I wasn't born in the city. I was born in West Texas in the desert. And so it's a little bit quieter and it's more open space. You could see forever. No trees either. I mean, sometimes I get claustrophobic with too much trees and too much rain is just like annoying to me. But yeah, but in terms of that, yeah, you just have to carve out space and time and know how you tick and what makes you in a more positive expression, to be happy and be open to people. And yeah, you have to just take care of yourself. It's probably different for everybody, like I need this much quiet, I need this much time to be around people. I can't be around alone by myself too much. I have to be alone 90% of the time. So it all depends on everybody's specific temperament.
Tell me about the process of making this album, Terrestrial Journeys, from piecing together the program and the recording and watching it all come together and what you're trying to hope to get out of it.
Yeah, so yeah, you helped me choose some of the tracks, and that was pretty cool. And then we figured out an order, and then I saw a lot of rhyme and rhythm to it, like a lot of reason, like wisdom to it. So that was wonderful. And then but what really, to me, really made the album come alive were the musicians that I was able to hire, and I'm so grateful that of all of them being in there. It was such a treat, such a special privilege to work with them, and also like on Octavian Audio as well. And that to me was one of the most exciting points, just the moments to be in the studio working with this profound musicianship all around. And then for the final product to come out, I think everybody did a great job, and so I'm just really happy about that. So yeah, and it was exciting, time consuming and exciting, and it's like but well worth it, absolutely well worth it.
Absolutely well worth it. And yeah, it's a project with legs, and we're proud to have you in the Neuma catalog, and people around the world are listening to it. I encourage everybody else to tune in as well. Thanks very much, Gilbert, for talking to us today.
Thank you very much.